Hello, my name is Wayne Elderton, and I'm a Tennis Canada coach developer, certified at the Coach 4 and Club Professional 3 levels, a PTR International Master Professional, and the tennis director of the North Vancouver Tennis Centre. We're going to look at a concept called situational point play. This fits into an overall approach that I call situation training, which is a variation of the game-based approach. Situation training is based on the premise that tennis uses open skills. Open skills require perception, problem solving, and decision making before applying technique. In an open skill, technique is how a player solves tactical problems they encounter during play. Successful technique in tennis is less about perfecting the perfect form as it is about adaptation. To empower players to learn the open skill of tennis, the goal of situation training is about expanding the library of situations players can handle at their level of play through effective and efficient technique, and to build a foundation for success at future levels. Training that focuses on isolated stroke technique disconnected to the situations it occurs doesn't fully equip players for the reality of tennis. Situation training uses a specific session structure. It starts with athletic development and moves into fundamental volume training. Now, if anyone is interested, there's a video on acecoach.com on my YouTube channel about fundamental volume training. But then it continues with the main body of the session being a section on tactical and technical training. The tactical and technical training section splits into three parts that follow a play, practice, play format. The point play components of play, practice, play are what I call situational point play. And that is what we're going to look at in more detail in just a moment. The first situational point play is to gain exposure to the situation and for coaches to see what the players actually do in the situation. Then the skills needed to be successful in the situation are trained in a practice piece. And finally, the session ends with situational point play, but it's geared to integrate the skills learned in the practice into their play. Most coaches will incorporate some kind of point play in sessions. Typically, it'll be playing points at the end of a session. Now, this is a good thing, but the point play at that end of the session is usually disconnected. What's more powerful is to connect the point play to what was practiced in the session. The classic example would be a session where players were training overheads at the net. No matter how many points are played at the end of the session, only a couple of overheads, if any, may happen at all. Coaches need a systematic way to ensure that the situation trained in the session is occurring in the point play, so players can understand the tactics of the skills used and integrate the technical skills that they learned. In other words, the point play needs to be directly connected to the situation being practiced. This is where situational point play comes in. The structure of connected situational point play begins with identifying 5 general situations that occur as a stereotypical point unfolds. Imagine a point being played. It begins with a serve and then a return. Next is a baseline exchange where the players are both back. A player then could get a short ball and approach the net, and they come in to volley or hit overheads. Then the player could respond with passing shots. Of course, all these situations might not happen in every point. For example, a serve and a volley may bypass the both back exchange. These are just all the possible general situations that could occur during a point. Situational point play will use these 5 categories to create point play games based on the 5-point situations. To practically apply the 5-point situations, I've created a fun little motto to remind coaches how they can modify the point play. The motto reads, "You can start a point at any point in the point." This is helpful so a coach knows that point play doesn't have to start with a serve and only use full points. Earlier, we imagined that stereotypical point with all the 5-point situations unfolding. A coach can actually parachute into any of the 5-point play situations, imagining that the others have already occurred. For example, if the focus in our practice is the approach and at net situation, we can modify our point play by imagining there was already a serve, already a return, and a baseline exchange already happened that produced a short ball. And here is where we'll actually start the situational point play. So you can start a point at any point in the point. If we zoom into the 5-point situations, we can focus on the specific situation of a specific shot, which we call in our system the shot cycle. Now it looks a little complex, but I'll just go over it a bit. In our Canadian system, we don't actually talk about strokes like forehands and backhands and serves and volleys as much as we deal with what we call shots. Each shot, or shot cycle, has 2 halves. The first is everything a player must deal with to receive the ball. This creates the situation and presents a problem for the player to solve. It includes the ball received, the location of the players, and the perception or the anticipation that can occur. The second half is the response to the situation. This is where the player solves the problem by responding with their projection of the ball. It includes which stroke they use, but also the characteristics of the ball sent and the phase of play. In other words, if the shot is neutral or offense or defense. Finally, there's a recovery before the entire cycle repeats again for the next shot. As you'll see in the examples in a moment, the easiest way to run situational point play is to have the coach start the point by feeding the specific situation, except for serving, of course, and this will allow the point to start with control. The coach can feed so the player receives a ball at a specific height or from a specific direction with a certain spin, etc. This puts the player in a particular situation and presents a problem for them to solve. Of course, it also works if players feed the balls for themselves. It's just not as controlled. A player feeding for themselves is something that needs to be done, for example, if there's one coach training multiple courts. Let's look at some examples for each of the point play situations. These are obviously not all the game setups you could use, but just a couple of examples to help you conceptualize this idea. I'm running these with 11 and 12-year-old tournament players, but the process works for juniors and adults. In situation training, it is very effective to deal with both sides of the situation. For example, if players are just serving, it really isn't point play. It's just a serving drill. Dealing with both sides of the situation in this case would mean playing competitive points that have a serve and a return, a situation and a response. Coaches can also just focus on returning if they choose, and the coach would actually then start with a serve as a feed.
Yeah, you know when you buy a DVD or a Blu-ray disc, sometimes there's a director's cut, or the director's comments are on the video. that's what we'll do right now. So I'll just be making comments from the coach's perspective as we're doing this. So basically when you're playing serving and returning points, you are starting the point with serve and return. But we want to narrow it down a little bit more. So what will happen is I'll just designate, first off, is it a first serve or a second serve? And then we'll designate, do we just look at points on the do side or the add side? All right, players. So the first game is Kate, you're up returning. Radin, you're at the back wall. All right, and Aiden, you're serving. And we're only going to serve, we're only going to play points to the do side right now. Okay, so only points to the do side. If you win 2 points for returners, you replace and become a server. Okay, so if you win 2 points, you replace and become a server. All right, now we're going to say it's only the first serve, so you get 3 serves. All right, so you can go for your first serve. Okay. It's like normal. Yeah. Here we go. And again, if we're looking at serves and returns, what we're mostly looking for is the serve effectiveness. So you're really looking at the stats of, if you're looking at a first serve, for example, it's first serve percentage and percentage of first serve points won is what you'd be trying to observe as the coach when they're doing this situational point play. All right, well played. Of course, as you can see, we could do it from the add side as well. And the other piece is if I'm looking for a second serve, we could just have 1 serve. So we're going to see that on the add side. Only 1 serve, second serve. Okay, that's out. All right, stay for 1. And for second serves, it's the same idea, that we're looking for a second serve percentage and percentage of second serves won. Now this time, you two will play this way, and Kate, you're over here, you're going to play this way. Okay, but when you play, you're only going to play on a half court and only cross court. Play on a half court and only cross court. Okay, so I'm just going to cut the court in half so you can see. All right, hold on, and you're up. Yeah, you can go to the net if you want. Okay, so what you can do is if you want more repetition, it is also possible to play only cross court, half court. All right, again, let's play, and if you win 2 off the player, you get to replace them as server. Alleys are in. Yeah, alleys are in. Just to give a little extra space to hit some angles and things, you can have the alleys in. And again, we would be designating whether it's first serve or second serve. And you just make sure that each player will get a turn at every position in your rotations.
A both back exchange automatically has both sides of the situation built in. For example, there could be a cross-court shot, which then puts them in a particular situation. But a player identifies the shot is weaker, and then they go down the line. That could be their response, for example. Let's see an example of point play for the both back situation.
So when you're doing both back situations, you need to imagine the court is split into thirds. There is a deuce half, or third, I should say, a deuce third, a center third, and then an ad third. So the easiest way to do things is to have the coach feed in the actual shot so they can recreate the situation. It is possible to have the players hit their own shots for these situation point plays. And that you would do that if you say, for example, if you had multiple courts going. But it's easier if the coach just simply feeds the situation. So here's how we're going to play. One up in the center and one touching the wall. You're in the center, you're touching the wall. Okay, I'm going to feed you a shot, and then we're just going to play out the point. All right? So this one, as you're going to see, is I'm just feeding a shot in the center. Okay. All right, here we go. Yeah, so I'm just feeding shots starting from the center, and if I feed too short, it actually isn't a both back situation anymore. So I have to make sure that I'm feeding deep enough that they are going to possibly stay back unless they hit an attacking shot. And we're just looking, for example, I'm going to see how many times do they run around their backhand to use their strong forehand, for example. Now, if players get wise to what you're doing, you can always throw in the odd feed to somewhere else just to make sure that they're not too set up for the shot. There's a deep shot into the corner, just to mix it up, but only once in a while. For the most part, I'm just looking to see what are they doing when they're receiving shots in the center of the court. Now, the other thing you can do is start from a different third. So now I'm going to start from this corner position. I'll move the player over with me, okay? And I'm going to start, I could feed to any position on the court. But for this one, we're going to say it's receiving shots in a cross-court exchange. That's the situation I've decided on. So here we go. Okay. All right, and again, the easiest thing to do is to have the coach just feed the situation. I can do receiving drives, for example, or I could change the situation up. Say today's theme is receiving high balls with topspin in a cross-court exchange. So then the feed would look like that, a high ball with topspin. Okay, and of course, I could also switch to the other side. Come on over here. Same idea. Okay, next up. Okay, clear your court. Okay, and again, for example, receiving high balls with topspin. That could be the theme. So then the coach feeds it, and then away they go.
We can train both approaching an at-net and passing by dealing with them as, again, two sides of a situation. Let's see an example of situational point play for the approaching at net and passing situations.
So this time what's going to happen is I will give you guys a short ball and then we play out the point. Okay, so here we go. Here's a short ball and then play it out. All right. Okay, and again, whatever situation you happen to be focusing on, that's what you'll feed. So say, for example, this one is, I'll say we received a short ball, but it's a slice to their backhand. So there's that slice to the backhand, short ball, and now they're going to come in and play out the point. Okay. And you can also play with 4 people on a court, playing only on half of a court, including the doubles alley. Same thing, short ball, and then we'll play it out. So you're here. Okay, so we're going to play on half of a court. There's a short ball and play, short ball and play. Line. Okay, here we go. Short ball, play it out. Okay, short ball, and away we go. You can also do shots, again, whatever situations at net you want. So in this situation, we'll have 2 players up at the net. Okay, I'm going to feed you a lob. You'll hit an overhead and then it's game on. Play on half of the court, doubles alley is in. Okay, so there's the lob, there's the lob. Okay, here we go again. Okay, there's a lob and there's a lob. And so in this situation, start at the service line. I'm going to feed you a ball at your feet. It'll be a volley or a half volley, and then start the point. Okay, so there's a ball at your feet, There it is. Okay, play again. Ball at the feet, and away we go. Okay. And again, we can play full court, so we'll switch to full court again. So here we go. You can go in. 1 person at the net, at the service line. Same idea though. Actually come a little bit closer. This time it's receiving a wide ball. So you're going to get a wide ball. You don't know which side. And then we'll play it out. Okay, so you've just hit a really good passing shot. And we'll say this. You've approached down the line. Okay, so he's over here. Right? And then he hits his passing shot and away you go. Okay, so go. All right, one more time. You can stay up for one. Here we go, Kate. It's a wide shot. Go. Again, the idea, you can see that it's flexible. The whole idea is that we're starting with a particular situation, whatever the theme of that day is. The coach feeds that situation. So think about that, the shot cycle, and what is the ball they're receiving and where are they located. Coach feeds that. They just go ahead and play out the point. During that, the coach is not really coaching so much as at the situational point play at the beginning of a session. You're just gathering information, trying to figure out what do they do in those situations. That then was going to move into a practice session where we can take that specific situation, like that wide ball on the volley, and just simply focus and practicing on it alone. Thank you.
During any situational point play, the coach should refrain from jumping in and coaching, but rather they need to observe, take some mental notes on how successful the players are at that situation, and where they need the work. Let the players experience the situation. Just be a cheerleader and a play organizer during situational point play. Once the situational point play game is done, The coach should always take the opportunity to present their findings. That is, they provide a little 1-minute report on what they noticed. For example, in a both back situational point play game about dealing with shots from the middle of the court, they may have said something like, I noticed that when you got balls in the middle, you mostly sent the ball back to the middle of the opponent's court. It only happened twice that any of you actually took advantage of the shot and hit it to the sides. Both of those points you actually won. The coach can then use the information to inspire the players for the practice session that comes next. The coach could say something like, what if we practice running around our backhand and use our forehand to send the ball to the sides of the court, making the opponent run? At this point, a clear demonstration would also be helpful. This goes a long way in getting players to buy in to what can be learned. In summary, in a situational training session, during the tactical technical training portion of the session, we actually use, again, a play, practice, play format. We connect playing points to what is being trained by making the point play distinctly situational point play. We do this by using two coaching tools. The 5-point situations tool gives us a general framework to define situations. This tool comes with the motto, again, you can start a point at any point in the point, so we can get sufficient repetition for the situation. The shot cycle tool allows us to define the specific situation to deal with. It informs the coach of the unique elements of that situation that they need to recreate with all of its distinctiveness. And finally, after the situational point play, the coaches should present their findings and inspire the players to practice the shots needed to be successful in the situation. Again, I'd like to thank Tennis Australia for giving me the opportunity to present. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at the address on the screen. You can also check out my website, acecoach.com, where there's lots of free articles and videos on game-based coaching, situation training, and other modern methodologies. I wish you all the best in your coaching adventure.